Good morning. During Public Service Recognition Week, we want to thank you for all that you do in service to our nation. You and your colleagues are being asked to do more with less while tackling increasingly complex issues for the American public. Leadership skills, regardless of your position, are more critical than ever. For more than 50 years, OPM Center for Leadership Development has helped government agencies meet their workforce education and development needs through interagency classes at the Federal Executive Institute and Eastern and Western Management Development Centers, through custom programs, USA Learning Online Training Solutions, the Lab at OPM, the Presidential Fellows Program, and most recently, the Federal Human Resources Institute. Due to the large number of participants, there will be limited opportunities to address questions. To submit a question, please send it to the moderator using the chat feature. We'll have Q&A at the end of the presentation as time permits, and thanks for muting your phone. Our presenter today is John Gill. John Gill is the Deputy Director at the U.S. Office of Personnel Management Center for Leadership Development. As the center's executive in residence, he is leading the effort to stand up the Presidential Executive Fellows Program, which brings top private sector leaders into the government on a limited term basis to help federal agencies solve their most pressing national challenges. Additionally, John is co-leading the strategy and execution of the Federal Human Resources Capability Improvement Initiative, with specific design and implementation responsibility for the HR curriculum. John began with the federal government in 2013 as Chief Human Capital Officer for the Department of Health and Human Services, responsible for the development, delivery, and governance of agency-wide human resources strategy, policies, and programs. John joined the federal government with an extensive background in the private sector, human resources, and administrative services. His last position was with Rolls-Royce PLC. He began with Rolls-Royce in 2001 as Executive Vice President, Human Resources for the Americas. He later was appointed Executive Vice President for Rolls-Royce's global energy sector, and finally, Executive Vice President for developing countries and emerging markets. Prior to Rolls-Royce, John spent 20 years with Lockheed Martin Corporation. He held senior human resource positions in each of the corporation's aeronautics, electronics, space, and information sectors. John was a member of the White House Senior Executive Service Reform Advisory Group. The group provided thought leadership that helped shape the previous administration's 2015 executive order on strengthening the senior executive service. John is an adjunct professor with the Georgetown University Master's Program in Human Resources and is on the U.S. Advisory Board of the University of Maryland Smith Business School Office of Executive Programs. He earned his BA at Columbia University and his MBA at Florida Technical University. John?
Thank you, Charlene, and good morning to everybody. And again, congratulations to all of you who are part of this great government civil service that we're all a part of. I'm not sure exactly who's out there on this call right now. I'm going to envision that there are many federal HR professional colleagues on this call. I'd also think that there may be some managers and employees that either get support from HR or are doing business directly with HR that may be participating in this as well. And I'm glad that both groups are on, because it really is about both our HR profession and the delivery of great service into the agencies that we support. So I'm happy to have both groups here. To our HR professionals and my colleagues, think of this. What if there was a center of learning for our profession that was designed by the best in the government, both OPM and the agencies, And when you looked at it, it gave you a clear understanding of what you needed to develop to be all that you could be, whether you were in staffing or performance or ER or LR or any other specialty area in the HR profession. And it was not only understanding what you needed to develop for your current position capability, but equally so future positions that you aspired to. And where education and learning was specifically lined up to where you are in your career, grade to grade. It would be a great place for us to be. And to our colleagues in the business, what if the quality of the consultancy and administrative services and problem-solving capability that we brought to you as your HR partners would reach higher levels than you enjoy today? Both of those things are at the foundation of what we're doing with not only the Federal HR Institute, but the overall HR Capability Improvement Program. And I'm going to talk to you about both of those things here over the next 20 minutes to a half hour or so. I am going to leave sufficient time at the end of this so that we can have some Q&As and fill in any blanks that you have. The first thing I'd like to do is give you a perspective of, bear with me a second here, a little bit of context. And it's a little bit of a historical play, but it's actually quite important for each of us to understand. And back in 2012, I guess it was, around 2012, there was a government-wide strategic workforce planning methodology that was created through which agencies and the CHICO Council could identify occupations and competencies where staffing gaps or capability in those mission-critical occupations, if not where they needed to be, could jeopardize the ability of the government or specific agencies to accomplish their missions. And there was a deep analysis that was done over probably about 18 months, identifying those mission-critical occupations. And frankly, one of those was our HR profession. That's the good news. What it essentially said to us is that, look, we have a very, very important role to play in terms of overall mission performance, along with the other 5 mission support organizations. So that was the good news. And there was progress made from 2012 to 2014/15, make no doubt about it. But what we were finding and what we were observing is that most of the measures that we had continued to show us not at the level that we needed to be as a community. And it really kind of became very, very forthright and visible as the Government Accountability Office went about their audit processes on mission-critical occupations and declared us early on as a high-risk profession, which meant that we needed to attend to improving our capability in a number of different ways, including our skills and competency levels. And so we faced that in 12, 13, 14, and into 15. And as I said, there was progress that was made, but again, we remained in a place that we did not want to be, nor could our agencies tolerate us being with respect to overall competency. And along about 2015, there was a change in approach. To this point, the way I would describe it is that agencies were looking to OPM to lead the effort with respect to the overall capability improvement program for the HR practice. And there were a number of CHICO colleagues, along with myself, but a number of other colleagues that suddenly kind of came to the stark realization that, in fact, while OPM should be center leading this effort, the real engagement needed to happen with the agencies where 90% of the HR practitioners lived and worked and provided services anyway. And so a very distinct change happened in 2015 leading into 2016. And what was established was a highly networked, co-chaired OPM/CHICO group that began a very deliberate programmatic approach to really getting at capability and skills growth within the federal HR community. And when I say very disciplined and structured, I think that's a very important thing for you to understand. I recall in some of our early sessions, it was all about, well, let's just put some training in place and things will be fine. And in fact, what we determined based on the way that we established the approach to this, we did some significant data analysis first. So when you look at the very first piece of the work that was done in 15 and in 16, you'll see workforce and data analytics standing up very clearly on the left side of this chart. And so before we jump to conclusions around putting training together, we needed to make sure we understood where we were relative to a profession writ large, both in terms of our organization constructs, the relative skill levels in each of the agencies, and within each of the specialty areas as well. And then and only then could we use that to determine through a root cause analysis process what we needed to do to make some changes to how we were going at this whole growth program. And by the way, when you look at that slide, when I said earlier that this entire effort has been co-led and co-chaired, it stands up in these 4 blocks as well. There was a senior level co-chair sitting at the top of this chart, but in each one of these work streams, those were co-led by an OPM senior official and a CHICO. And so the point there is that this has been as much an outside-in as it has been an inside-out collaboration on getting this methodology in place proper. And I think that's really important to understand. And having sat as in an agency for a number of years, I certainly saw this as a really great way to go at building a highly networked, fully integrated approach to talent development. So at any rate, we came out of that workforce and data analytics work and learned a number of different things. What we did learn is that we had inconsistent techniques for making selections and measuring performance in our agencies for HR practitioners, and we very clearly had inconsistent training and investment in training and the content of training across our agencies as well. And based on that analytical data and some recommendations that were made, we held a meeting with the CHICO community in May of 2016. We were off-site. We were at the Department of Education. There were 18 of the 24 CHICO agencies at the session, including our OPM colleagues. I was a CHICO at the time, and there was some really fundamental points of principle that came out of that discussion that we are now building our whole concept of operation around. One was, let's apply a common set of technical competencies across federal HR, particularly beginning in Title V, the Title V environment, which many of us play in, the majority of us play in. That being said, there is significant work equally done in other titles such as DOD and Homeland Security and VA and my old agency as well. But in the substance of it, we wanted to make sure that we were looking at competencies that could transcend any agency with respect to fundamental technical competencies, with an idea that on the edges, the 10 or 15% were going to have to be tailored by each of the respective agencies who may have been dealing with a number of other specific authorities. So it was very important that that was the agreement that we came out of with OPM at the time. And then the second thing we said is that we expect OPM to develop a common core curriculum for developing and assessing those technical competencies. And we will use that across the whole federal HR space. And we expect you to lead in the production of those courses and make them available to departments for credentialing and individuals for credentialing. So this was May of 2016. It was a very important, in fact, I would call it kind of a watershed meeting that we held for that 5 or 6 hours. And what it really said is, look, you know, there is an 80% solution that could be standard across the entire federal HR professional workforce, which is over 40,000 people. There's going to be tailoring on the edges, but what we want to see is we want to see a level of core development based on a new look at competencies. and make sure that we were constructing the competencies associated with each of these specialty areas in a way that led to the HR professional of today and the future, not from 20 years ago. And so when you look at this particular chart, we immediately went to what's called in the titling recruitment and hiring, but that first bullet there talks about the refreshing of the competency models. It was a very important launch place for us to jump off of for the overall capability improvement program. And what has gone on and continues to go on through our policy shop here at OPM with a highly networked group of subject matter experts from the agencies are a refreshing of those competency models. And we also said that given the fact that staffing was the longest pole in the tent, if you will, and carried a weight higher than any of the other HR specialty areas as relates to agencies' impression of the quality of service from HR, we said we'll start with staffing. And so the competency model and the development of the new competency models began with that staffing specialty area and are carrying on through a number of other ones, all the other ones as well, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But the important piece of that is that we did not jump to development until we really understand where our root cause issues were with respect to skills and capability gaps. We then did a very deliberate, deep look at refreshing those competency models and not looking at them purely through the eye of a federal HR professional, but that team did work in the private sector marketplace too, looking at competency frameworks for HR professionals writ large in the general industrial environment, and use those to inform the development of those competency models. And only when agreed by the steering group, those competency models would go into place. So it was very important leading up to the discussion we're going to have on FHRI now, for you to understand that was the underpinning of what we were doing. So bottom line there is that it was a highly engaged and continues to be a highly engaged human capital officers group. It is center-led by OPM, both the policy shops, including Merit Systems and Accountability, as well as HR Solutions and the Center for Leadership Development, where I sit and we sit with FHRI. And it is all about building a continuum of learning for HR professionals to advance themselves and their agency missions. So when I talk here about refreshing competency models, those of you, and there are probably many here on the phone that know how all of that works. One of the things that's really important and that we learned is that we needed to get more detailed at the overall competency modeling framework. So it was both the technical aspects of the competency models, but through the root cause analysis, we also learned that, boy, we needed to pay some attention to not only the technical acumen of our colleagues in HR and ourselves, but there needed to be some embedded, what I would call business acumen or general acumen capabilities as well. And so as we're building the curricula around each of these specialty areas, it is about technical competencies, but equally so, it is also understanding competencies associated with customer service and influencing and negotiation and interpersonal skills and oral communication and planning and evaluation that are going in and being built into the specialty areas as well. So what does this look like in terms of a first blush competency model? And by the way, as I've said, this is going to be a 2-year journey. What I'm going to show you is where we are with the staffing specialty right now, with the 6 or 7 that are in training coming behind it, but I'll give you an idea of what I mean here. So if you looked at the technical competency model for staffing specifically, you'll see that it has a range of competencies that begin at GS5. So there is even at the GS5 a point of view that an entry-level person coming in needs to understand these things only at the awareness level, but very quickly need to move up to have a basic knowledge of these at the GS7. And you'll see continuum of development that moves across left to right on each of these particular technical competencies. And so the curricula is built to be able to develop those technical competencies at the right level for where the individual sits, and not jump around and have someone who is a GS-13, entering at the entry level to do a topical course, but a GS-13 having the ability and through this learning be able to be at a level of proficiency in certification and selection, for instance, that is an advanced level. So the curricula lines up very specifically to the now approved competency models that are being put in place by the policy shop in conjunction with the subject matter experts in the agencies. So you look at that and you say, okay, now how do you take that and move that into an overall curriculum, if you will? And I'm going to show you what the continuum of learning looks like for staffing. So this is and this is, believe me, this is about 20% of where we're going to end up, or 18% or so, relative to the overall Federal HR Institute curricula writ large. But this is the curriculum map for the staffing specialists. And some of you who have looked in HRU in the past will recognize some of these headings. You'll see 4 levels there, beginning at the foundations level, running to technical, advisory, and strategic. And where we are focusing at this point is up through the 4th stratum, so to the strategic level. And my point earlier about not just having individuals who have some technical foundation on, federal hiring processes at the foundational level at the GS 5/7, but where we have also said that because of where even 5s and 7s need to be relative to proficiency levels, that we're going to build this into the foundational part of this overall curriculum. And so you'll see there both technical pieces of this, like staffing programs for special populations to the far right, all the way over to the other side, or near the other side, that talks about foundations of service excellence. What does the engagement look like from a customer-focused standpoint? And you'll also see to the very far left the importance of having that entry-level person understand where she or he and their particular specialty, in this case staffing, fits in relation to other components of HR. And I'm going to talk about that just here for a second, because it probably passed by quickly. So if you looked at this and you said that, okay, this is a staffing specialty, well, what you'll see 3/4 of the way down is labor law. Now, ultimately, each of you who are staffing specialists will grow to much higher levels of proficiency in that. But what we're saying is, even in the beginning, that staffing specialist at a 5 or 7 should understand, and we want to show them how their particular functionality fits in relation to other parts of the functional domain in which they're operating. And you'll see the same thing happen further up in the area of compensation. So what are we doing from a compensation practice standpoint that would be germane to doing your work as a staffing specialist? So the important thing that I wanted to really impress upon you here is that we have said, and when I say we, this is not my office. This is the combination of the network community of subject matter experts from the agencies working with the policy and MSAC groups on the competency modeling, and many of the same subject matter experts from the agencies and other subject matter experts working with my team in making sure that we're building those capabilities in at the earliest level of an HR person coming into the federal community. And I wanted to just impress that there at the foundation level, and you will see the same continuum of learning left to right as you move up this slide as well. And so when you look at this, there are below that yellow box up there, there are 22 courses that are there right now. There's a couple of other points that I want to make that are really quite important. When we set out to lay lay this curricula out specifically for staffing, but we said as points of principle with the steering committee, not all courses need to be instructor-led. And in fact, the way people learn today is very different than it was 20 to 30 years ago, where everything had to be in a classroom. There will always be an important part that the classroom plays, particularly as you're doing group work, as you're doing some forms of simulation or workshops, but even those, from a technology standpoint, are evolving over time. So what we have said to our design specialists is that as you're looking at these, we want to do very deliberate work on the substance for sure, which is where the subject matter experts come into this, but we want to use as much as we can emerging design technology to develop and produce the courses. So when you're looking at this bolus of 22 courses that are coming up, you'll see essentially a blend. There will be some that will be instructor-led, there will be some that will be web-based completely, there will be some that will be blended solutions, and there will be some that will be broad webinars, if you will, where there will be instructors playing it. The long term, in my view, is that we would see many of these courseware as it becomes solidified as the curricula for HR in the federal community to be app-enabled, so that HR practitioner that's sitting out there in Boise, Idaho, for instance, dealing with a particular problem, she may be able to very quickly connect to an app, be totally tied into the specific subject matter area in which she's dealing with a problem, be able to isolate and pull up running rules and methods of engagement, and longer term actually have a social system that are specific to that particular area that can help her with that are federal HR practitioners. So that's the long-term play that we're looking at with this. The other thing that I would say that's actually quite important in the curricula itself, as I've just talked, we're moving towards much more of a technology-enabled approach long-term. But the other thing that I would say is, and we learned this, and it was a lesson that we probably knew to begin with, we conduct pilots on every one of the new courses that come out. And we were conducting a pilot on one of the instructor-led courses. And we had a superb instructor in the particular course. I mean, he was very versed in instructional system design, had tremendous platform skills, but didn't have the subject matter expertise in the subject that we were talking about. He had a general understanding of it. And we had 16 HR practitioners in there, and they were at range from GS 11 to 14. And the course lost credibility, because while he was a good stand-up communicator and presenter, what the class also needed to know were the stories behind the slides, an understanding of how they may be able to apply this in their workplace. And so we have made a very specific call that any course that's taught in the Federal HR Institute will be taught by a federal HR subject matter expert. Not necessarily purely from OPM, because there's some tremendous expertise that I've certainly had the pleasure of learning about over the last year or so since I've been on this side of the patch, that are sitting in the agencies who are deep in technical knowledge and have tremendous ability to be able to get up and communicate too. So you will see long-term the standing up of the Federal HR Institute's adjunct faculty, and it'll be made up of subject matter experts from the agencies in OPM, and they will be the teachers of these courses. So that's an important lesson that we learned. It's equally something, as I've talked to colleagues and said, what do you think? Would you like to do this? They've said, heck yes. Can't do it on a steady diet, but boy, it's a great opportunity for them to step out of their day-to-day work and take 2 days running an instructor-led training once a year or twice a year. It gives them a refresher, and equally so, it gives them a perspective of what's happening in other parts of the government as well, because more often than not, that cohort may not be a cohort, but be made up of HR professionals from other agencies as well. So there's a learning process for those individuals that we'll be building into this as well. So the points that I want to make there is that This curricula was built off of this technical and general competency structure. It is both a content of technical and general skills that we're building beginning at the foundational level that runs up on a continuum of learning from left to right, such that by the end of your, if you will, your series here at the SS330, which are still in development, by the way, you should be a fully functioning HR practitioner at a more senior level in the government. So I'm going to just jump here real quick to where we are with this particular set of courseware right now. As I said, we use staffing as the, if you will, the stalking horse for proving out the concept of operation here. We have determined as a collective, both OPM, the executives, the Employee Services Organization, and HR Solution and MSAC, that yes, this is the right way to go. Highly networked, stay connected to the agencies, bring the agencies in to get good practicum perspective, bring the agencies in particularly on the learning development side as well, who have proven to be extremely powerful in this. By the way, when you look at this staffing specialist curriculum map and this technical proficiency level, just to give you a scope, there were in excess of 170 subject matter experts that participated in that work over the last year to 14 months or so. And the majority of them were not from OPM. They were from agencies, both participating as subject matter experts, but equally so as pilot participants in the courses that we were having, an evaluation of those pilots, both subject matter experts from the agencies and HR policy and merit systems and accountability and HR solutions folks from OPM specifically. So, while it feels like it's taking a long time and all of us would like to go faster, the methodology, in my view, is right. This should not be done in a vacuum. It's not being done in a vacuum. It's highly engaged, highly networked, and this is the way that it will become right at the end for our 40,000 colleagues across the government. So today we have, as I might have mentioned earlier, we have 18 of the 22 staffing courses up, which means that they are open and available for registration. I'll put the registration schedule up here in a minute or two, talking about particularly the instructor-led training. But if you had seen the previous chart, you'll see a lot of those that are web-based, and they're up and available and accessible right now. And when you look at them, it's important to take a look at them, and where there is a recommendation that says, before you take this course, you may want to check this web-based training out and make sure that you've got good grounding before you go to this. Kind of like a prerequisite if you're in a university, not necessarily absolutely mandatory, but it's good guidance for you to make sure that you have good grounding before you go into the next course. So at any rate, that's where we stand with the staffing curriculum rollout. We expect to have all of these up by September, or certainly by the end of September, which would end up having the curriculum for staffing, which again is but one of a series of curricula that are going to be stood up across the entire HR specialty arena. And when I say that, as an example, I'll show you that it is both staffing and classification and HR development and a number of other ones. Staffing is about done. We have another 3 to 4 months to go to produce the final courses on the bottom piece there, but that will be completely up and running. I'll just spend a minute here talking about what we have said is important. In the beginning, it was about organization performance. It was about taking our capability to the next level in support of the missions and the agencies that we were providing service to, and that service is broad-reaching. It's certainly administrative services, consulting services, policy application, it's consulting services, problem-solving services, and what we are doing with FHRI is getting really clear on what that looks like as a federal HR practitioner. If you're a staffing person or an ER person or a learning and development person, that way of engaging with the business that you're supporting is really important. And we're designing these courses for immediate application to do that from both a technical standpoint, but also this business acumen perspective when you enter back into your work environment. I've already mentioned that we're moving much more towards a technology-enabled environment. Looking ahead, you'll see more things that are technology of simulation. We'll be doing much more of that. You'll see the use of apps so that we can deploy these capabilities more broadly, because just as I said, 90% of the federal HR practitioners don't sit in OPM. Majority don't sit in Washington either. So we need to make sure that we can engage more robustly with our colleagues that are around the country, and that they have ready access and just-in-time access to the courseware as well. And what is equally as important is that by virtue of doing this inside of the government, we have the tremendous advantage of being on top of things quick. So as opposed to waiting for something to get more broadly out into the public domain and to be interpretation out there, we can work with our policy colleagues and understand the regulatory environment at deep level and look at the implications of those things with respect to not only the competency models, but equally so new learning that we need to put into the courses and adjustments to the curricula that we have, if not in real time and very quickly afterwards. And that's an important piece to move towards a more agile learning environment for our HR colleagues out there. And then, equally as important, if we're doing this right, we should be preparing for each of our HR colleagues a roadmap of development and a continuum of learning for them to work with their managers and supervisors, and for their managers and supervisors to say, hey, this is something, if you're aspiring to move in this direction or to just take your performance at the level you're at to the next level, why don't you go take a look at enrolling in this course? It might be quite good for you, given what we understand now around the continuum of learning with this particular curricular framework that's being set up. So that's very important from my perspective. It was, as I was looking at it from an agency standpoint, and it equally as profound as I sit here at OPM today. So looking ahead, as I said, the web-based training are up and available, and I'll give you the sites to get to that. There is a formal instructor-led training schedule out too. We still have spaces available for June sign-up on some of these courses. We limit the course size. We're not doing any more than 25. We will lose the richness beyond that, so we're capping those at 25. We can do some adjustments, but do take a look at these and the schedule of these, and then get inside of the FHRI website to understand more deeply what this courseware is about. And then lastly, what's ahead? So as I said, we're now, it's actually, there's an adjustment here. This should read 18 courses delivered by, actually this is an older slide. This should read 18 courses are up and running now. We have an additional 4 to go. We also have from classification, ER, and LR outcomes that will occur by the end of this year, and those will be up and running completely by the end of 2018. And looking ahead, we have HR development, HR systems, benefits and compensation that are going through the same competency modeling methodology, and equally so, we expect that we will add to this framework an HR business partner specialty track as well to this. This looks, as I'm looking at this slide, this looks like a dated slide. I'm going to ask that we get this replaced because there's some adjustments to the schedule here, and I'll make sure that gets out more broadly with the the document that we put out for folks to be able to grab and use inside of their agency. So team, if we could make sure that we put the updated slide to this, that would be appropriate. What I would say that is in any of these, just as I've described the staffing curricula and the staffing competency modeling, we will follow the same methodology that we used for the staffing area for all the other specialty areas. Deep competency analysis using the highly networked approach with agencies, clear job task analysis coming out of that, and a highly networked subject matter expert group to deal with the curricula development for each of these areas from a courseware standpoint as well. Going to follow the same methodology. And so if you go to the next slide, where I could really enjoy, as I have to this point, the participation of subject matter experts across all of the course development that's going to happen in these specialty areas, the participation of many of you in that process. And for that, there are all kinds of things that we can do with respect to getting you involved early, playing with the pilot programs, helping us with those. Equally so, getting some level of credentialing even coming out of the pilot process. And then equally so, as I talked about, looking for building our adjunct faculty team here for the courseware that will be coming up ahead, and equally so for the staffing specialty curriculum. The other side, more for and specifically for your agency leadership, while we have individual course pricing on a per individual basis, we're also looking at putting custom programs together, not only for a particular cohort in an agency, but equally so where we're able to adjust some of the costs based on use of classroom space, faculty members from those agencies. There are some things that we can certainly do from customizing something specific for an agency. And to that end, we're actually, we have a call out now in a couple of agencies whom I've said, if you want to be a launch partner here with us, because this is just becoming live, the staffing specialty curricula, and you want to launch with us and put a cohort together and have that cohort work with us, both in terms of active participation in the classes and gaining certification from those classes, but equally so being able to put a customized program together where you may want to blend one or two or three of the courses together, particularly where they are what's called scaffolded classes, where you want to take a web-based class before you take the instructor-led class. We can put customized programs together for 2 or 3 launch agencies as well moving forward. So with that, I'm going to stop. It's 11:42 right now. We have 18 minutes, and I'd be happy to open up the questions. I see questions here. I'll just kind of go from bottom to top.
Sure. Go ahead.
This is from a couple of our colleagues. The slideshow will be mailed to the participants? Yes. And we will adjust that forward schedule. The one that I just showed is a dated one. We've got an adjusted schedule there, so we'll make sure that becomes part of that. There's a question here. Can the curriculum map be used as a career map too? The answer is yes. Now, the way that we think about it, and one of the reasons that we've worked so closely with our colleagues in the policy shop, is to make sure that as they have looked at the competencies and the proficiency levels of those competencies as you progress up, FHRI is using it to help determine the continuum of learning that we need to put together. But these ultimately will become the career maps as well. They're much richer than we've seen before. I think the team is doing an extraordinary job with that. And I expect that these will become a much more informed way to move your career. I would also say, and we've had this conversation in a number of different places, it could very well be that, and many of us have grown in different ways, breadth is really important. And that's one of the reasons for that foundational kind of work. So while you're sitting there as a GS 11 or 12, say you're a staffing specialist right now, and you've gotten a bit of you got a little bit of a taste of labor relations. And you say, you know, that world is one that is attractive to me. And I'm wondering what I might be able to do to get a little bit more knowledge in that. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever that working with your manager and with the subject matter experts and with our own internal services to go pick a good class for you to be able to jump into and take a look at from a not only a survey standpoint, but actually build a little capability in that area. And it may very well be that the agency that you're in, there's a real integration and interrelationship between staffing and labor relations. I'm making that up as a supposition, but there very well could be. So there's no reason for not doing that. And the end game is all of this curricula, which in the end I would envision being somewhere between 65 and 75 courses across the range of specialty areas that I've just described, to be able to move around, navigate, see where that course fits in terms of the continuum of learning for that particular specialty area that you may not be a part of. So it's if you think of it as I began this, kind of the center of learning, whether you want to be a staffing specialist for your life or not. If we know a subject matter expert, how do we refer them to FHRI? Call any or email any of the individuals on the left, and I'll put her out on the limb right now because Meg has been kind of our go-to person in leading this effort. Meg Bowman is noted here. Please get it to Meg. She is working with many of our colleagues across the government right now, and she is the one that's the keeper of that broad family. And by the way, just as an aside, there was a fairly prestigious award that was just given out, and it's a training technology award that's called the Hermes Award. It's a global competition, and the staffing curricula received an award in conjunction with our outside contractors who did the instructional system design. What I would say to any of the individuals that are on the phone that participated in the subject matter reviews, in the pilot processes, and the inputs back from that, whether it be the SME work with the competency models or the SME work in developing the curricula, thank you, because it was that part of the effort along with the technical design process that made that be a high value competitive position for that particular award. So my point there is subject matter experts are extremely critical, and I really want them active participants in this. It's good for the agencies as well because we're assuring that we're getting the inputs from the agencies, and it's equally good for those individuals because they get a little bit of breadth building themselves. Let's see. I'm trying to get to, it's cut off here. We're in the federal judiciary. How do we access FHRI, and is there a cost? You can access it, and Meg or Charlene Sion can get you access to it. And you are, your federal HR colleague, you can certainly participate in that. And there is a cost. These are fee-for-service courses. And to be clear, this is a several $1 million investment that's being made. We're putting this together. They're extremely competitive relative to the marketplace, and they're going to lead to not only what I would call a whole system approach to development, but as we do this right, we're going to get some very important measurements of performance outcomes from knowledge application as well, and equally so performance outcomes in relation to mission support. So there are some other aspects that are built into the courseware that are important for us so that we can continue to invest in moving this whole agenda forward. The course costs are listed on the website, and they range from a couple of $100 to $450 or $500 for web-based training, all the way up to $1,300 or $1,400, as I recall, for a longer-term instructor-led training course. That's the general range, and they're all noted on the website. Let's see. A great question by someone. Can we pay for our own courses, or does it have to come from agency funding? It does not have to come from agency funding. We had I think a very healthy conversation on this a week or two or so ago. We're still thinking that through. If you're a federal HR practitioner and you want to participate in this, I would certainly make your manager aware of it, but I don't see any preclusion from doing that. What I will do is, on that question, I will get that confirmed to the audience here over the next week or so and share that back out with this particular web-based participant list. And this one is learn more to be part of this effort moving forward. Great. So if you were, this is Pamela Sanchez, again, let any one of me or Meg or Charlene know that. Rab, by the way, is our, as noted here on the left, he is our registration guru. So he's the guy that gets you in the system. He's the one that handles the transactional process of getting you registered for the class. He deals with all the budget-related matters to make sure it flows to the right place. So he's an important person to know and to keep his phone number if something gets goofed up. Charlene and Meg are the program management folks with me, and either of those can give you the broad swath of how you can participate, as I can as well. But feel free to call either any of the three of us. I would certainly start with Meg and Charlene to get your preliminary questions answered. I see. It looks like I've gotten the questions answered. I don't see any more here, and so with that, I can give everyone back 8 minutes. The only takeaway that I would say or give to you is a couple of important points. This program, the FHRI Institute, is an important but not the sole reason for doing this work. In fact, this is about your own development, your ability to perform at your highest levels for mission accomplishment. That's where all this began. We were defined as a mission-critical occupation, and what we have done as a collective over the last couple of years, and will continue to do for the next 2 years, is to put some vehicles in place that allow us to be all that we can be as individuals in our agencies, for the agencies, as well as take our own career to the next level. This is built by federal HR subject matter experts, delivered by federal HR subject matter experts, for the HR professional environment of the government. And with that, I'll close up. Thank you all for jumping on today. If any other questions pop in, we will get this back out to you. We'll get those responses out to you, and I think we'll be able to do them generally. So if a question comes in, we will respond to the question and give it in due course to everyone who was on the call today. Thank you very much.
We want to take this opportunity to thank you for all that you do in service to our nation and for taking the time to attend this workshop today. We hope that you gained some helpful insights from this webinar. Please visit our website at leadership.opm.gov, and if you'd like additional information about our program and services. Also, please provide your email address in the Q&A pod as provided during the webinar. Thank you.